Hello everybody. We've already met, online at least. You know me, I'm Magnus Frampton. I'm from the University of Fechter in Germany. This is one of 3 videos that I've specially recorded for you all. Why have I recorded these 3 videos? Well, I've recorded them for 2 particular reasons. Firstly, we're going to have this very exciting week together. We're going to be together learning as a whole group in our in-person mobility week. And I want to prepare you for that so that you get as much out of that as possible. And it really is an intensive week, so it's lovely to be well prepared for it. But I've also recorded these videos because I'm going to be your host for the next online session. And I want that to be a little bit interactive. We have a lovely chat function on Teams so we can contribute to that session. I'm going to be asking you questions. And maybe it's fun for you if I ask you questions that you're a little bit prepared for. So that's my second reason for recording these videos. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to invite you to note down your answers. And I'll be repeating many of these questions in our online session together. And our theme for this video and the next one is going to be the global definition of social work, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I first want to say a few words about European social work and comparative social work. And maybe it's fun if I start by telling you an anecdote about how I got interested in this topic. I was in your position. I was a social work student. Actually, I was at the beginning of my studies, and my professor invited friends from Northern Ireland. So we had this lovely group of guest lecturers. They told us about social work in their country. And we were contrasting social work in Northern Ireland and social work in Germany. And it was just fascinating. One of my professors, he gave me a lovely book recommendation, this text here by Walter Lorenz, Social Work in a Changing Europe, and you'll find books with similar titles in your library. Really inspiring to think about how social work can be different in different places, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be learning about social work in one European country in our week together. So we're going to be in one country, but we're going to be from 4 countries. And we're going to be naturally talking about that. We're going to be simultaneously thinking about social work in 4 different countries, in 4 different places. So in a sense, we're going to be doing comparative social work because we can't not compare. You know, it's going to be our instinct to compare all the time. So as I said, more about those comparisons later on in video 3. For now, for this video, first of all, I want to start by thinking about what social work is. What social work is. Not just from a national perspective, not even just from a European perspective. For the next video or 2, I want to think globally. I want to look at this question, what is social work, from an international perspective. I think we have a global profession. Why? Well, why can I say that? Why might we argue that social work is a global profession today? I want you to scratch your heads now and think about this. This is a nice point to pause. In a minute, I'm going to give you some of my answers, but pause the video now and think of some reasons why we might argue that our profession is not a national one, it's a global one today. Pause now and unpause now. What did you come up with? The first thing might be the idea of methods. Social work has global methods. Many of the methods we use pretty much everywhere. And a classic example of this would be working with individuals, working with families. We often plan a package of care services for them, and we call this social casework. Okay, it's a method that we inherited from our American friends more than 100 years ago. This is a really old method and one of the 3 classic US social work methods. The other 2 being social group work and community development. So we have some methods in common. We also have some theories in common. For example, in social work, we have strengths-based approaches. I was in Stavanger 6 or 7 years ago, and I met these lovely professors that were very passionate about using strengths-based social work. So they were encouraging clients to see their own strengths, thinking with clients about their own resources. And I found it fascinating because in Germany we talk about ressourcenorientierte soziale Arbeit, resource-oriented social work, very similar to what these two professors were talking about. So certainly shared social work theory. We have shared values, we have shared social work ethics. Wherever you're doing social work, you're probably going to be having a close orientation on human rights. You know, and that's a nice example of a value base which is shared to everybody in the profession. What about the mandate? That's often common. There's common things that social workers are expected to do. So again, wherever I am, child abuse may be seen as a basic social work task. If a child is being abused or maybe neglected, that's something that social workers have to address, have to deal with. My final 2 points focus on how our society is globalized. There's a society that we have today which has shared global social problems. For example, the problem of unemployment, the problem of poverty. You know, these problems are there whichever country you're in. Also linked to globalization, think about the internationality of, well, everybody. People are so mobile today. They weren't in the past. My father died in a house 3 miles away from the house where he was born. You know, quite common for his generation, born in the early 1940s. But by the time of my generation, people were becoming much more mobile. And today it's quite common to have practitioners working in more than one country. You know, they might migrate in the middle of their working life. Or you have researchers that do cross-national research. Or you do educators who teach abroad or teach outside of their birth country, like me. Or you have clients who are themselves migrants, and that's a big field of social work, supporting the migrant community. So this is a cluster of answers. This list is by no means complete. But what I'm trying to argue here is that although we see our profession from a national perspective, some of us, for example, the German students, will be reading almost entirely German textbooks during their studies. So we may feel our profession is just a national one in our country, but actually our profession is an international one, even if we haven't thought about this so much before. I'm going to use this fact to talk about defining social work in a few minutes, but first of all I have to go a bit off topic. I want to first of all ask you, what is a tree? And you're thinking, Magnus is being crazy now. Why is he asking us this silly question? What is a tree? You know, this is not an interesting social work question at all. But I want you to think about it anyway. What is a tree? If you can, stop now and make a short definition. A nice start for your definition exercise may be to close your eyes. You know, what tree do you think about when you close your eyes? And that may inspire your definition. Do that now and pause now. So unpause now. What tree did you come up with when you were thinking of a tree? I'm standing here in Germany right now, and I instinctively thought of the great German oak tree. I say great because it seems to be almost a national symbol. In my hand here, I have a coin. It's a euro coin, and it's actually, I'm just trying to hold it up to the camera. It's not really catching the light. Hang on. Can you see that? Yeah. You may well have a German coin in your wallet, and you'll find it actually has an oak tree leaf on it. A little oak leaf is on the euro coin, and it was on the Pfennig as well 25 years ago. And it's no coincidence, this tree is in our culture. You know, it's in many of our famous German paintings. We may even see it as being a national symbol on account of its strength and its resilience. You know, we'd love to transfer those characteristics to us as a people, as a country. I say this anecdote because a German student said just that when I was in a seminar 20 years ago, but a Polish student quickly added, actually, it's our national tree as well. And he was arguing that it symbolized his country just as well as Germany. So it certainly is a common image for Central European countries. And if you're in Stavanger, I'm guessing you may well have an oak tree in your garden or in your street somewhere. I think they grow quite happily there. But if you go further northwards in the Nordic countries, you may see fewer oak trees. And it may not be your most instinctive choice of tree. When I go to Finland, I'm dazzled by your beautiful pine forests. So if I think of a Finnish tree, it's going to be a pine tree, not an oak tree. Now, this detail is interesting. If I use the oak tree for my definition of what a tree is, I might say a tree is a big thing made of wood with leaves, and the leaves fall in the autumn. But if I'm thinking of a pine tree, that definition is no longer valid. Then it's going to be a big thing made of wood with needles which stay on it the whole year around. It's evergreen. So that's kind of interesting. A definition of a tree depends on what country I'm in. Now we have some other definition problems. I've given examples of landscapes where trees are big things, but if you go really far north, you get these strange dwarf trees, or maybe just bushes. Is a bush a tree? So we have genuine definition problems, and some of these problems are related to the place where we are making our definition. These two images come from Europe. What about if we leave Europe? Look at this. This is an image from Japan. And in Japan, a tree may well be a cherry tree. If you ask a Japanese person, what tree do you first think of when I say the word tree, they'll probably picture a cherry tree. A plant which is amazingly celebrated in literature, in poetry, in art, like this woodcut here. So isn't that interesting? We've got quite a different image of a tree. And here it's not so much the leaves or the needles that are interesting as much as the cherry blossom. You've got these wonderful flowers at a particular time of year which are culturally celebrated with festivals and events. So the tree in Japan may well be a cherry tree. You can see where this is leading, can't you? Our idea of what a tree is, our intuitive definition, is going to depend on our birth country, or the country where we're living right now. And these differences between our instincts, they're quite real differences. We have different ideas of what a tree is depending on where we are. Could it be the same with social work? So I want to move on now. In a minute, I'm going to be presenting an international definition of social work, which was collectively agreed on by a bunch of experts. Experts in discussion to collectively find a shared definition of what social work is. A big project. This the one I'm going to give you is going to be the second, the first 21st century one. There's 3 in total so far. Each one is a huge undertaking, literally taking years to produce, and a whole series of consultations, policy documents, meetings, discussions. So my question now has to be, why should we do this project? This is an expensive and time-consuming project. Why? So the global definition of social work, a lot of work by the global social work community, an enormous project. Why should we do this? Why should we produce one definition which we hope is valid for all of us? What arguments are there in favour of creating an internationally agreed definition of social work? So this is your next question to think about. Scratch your heads, pause now and scratch your heads and note down some of your arguments. Why is it a good thing to do? Because I'm convinced it is. I'm passionate about this project, but why is this a good project? What might this definition bring us which makes it such a worthwhile thing to have? Now, I'm not going to answer this question here. Note your answers and we'll come back to them in our online session together. I'm going to close this video with one last question for you to think about. In a moment, we'll be discussing official definitions of social work, these official ones that have been collectively decided upon. But first, consider your own definition of social work. As a Finnish student or a Belgian student or a German student or a Norwegian student, what is your definition of social work? How would you define it? What words would go in there? Think about a short definition. Be spontaneous. What words, what ideas have to go in it? Okay, so make an ad hoc definition, write down a few terms, a few ideas, maybe a sentence or two for it. And again, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your answers, jot them down on a piece of paper or note it on your phone, because I'm going to ask you that question again when I see you in our online session. I hope you've enjoyed this first video. You'll find 2 more waiting for you. Thanks for now. I'll see you again in video 2.